I have between a $30 and $40 million net worth. When you ask me how I made the money to get here, it's going to sound incredibly unsexy and boring.
We're getting our assets together, ladies. This is embarrassing at 42 to admit I have no idea how all of this works. I opened my first brokerage account this week.
Yes.
I don't want to feel this way about money, about my assets anymore. So I'm building it now.
The willingness to really face yourself is actually the greatest asset there is. There's parts of my story that look really glamorous. Let's talk about the worst part of my story, which is I almost lost it all. Most of the things that we think of as success are really vanity metrics. Top line revenue is my favorite thing to hate on because it means nothing. I kept seeing clients that had money in the bank, but their personal lives were a hot mess.
What would you say is the number one thing blocking business owners from experiencing true freedom in their businesses?
The one thing that keeps people from that level of success is usually
okay, this might be one of the most pivotal conversations that you listen to when it comes to building true wealth. This year, maybe this century, I learned so much. What's so cool about having a podcast is you get a masterclass in topics that you really want to dive deep and learn more about while you're creating content at the same time. And today I invited my friend KK Hart to join me. And this conversation went way beyond what was on my little cards and what I was intending for you to take away. If you are not familiar with KK, you're going to fall in love with her through this conversation in the same way that I have. But just to give you a little taste of this woman's incredible background and her heart, no pun intended. She is a sought-after strategic investor, advisor, seasoned entrepreneur with experience building, investing in, and scaling multi-million-dollar brands. Some that you would know and notice by name, like Liquid Death, Create and Cultivate, MindBody, ClassPass, Pure Barre, and Lily. And I don't even actually know how to prepare you for this conversation other than to say, if you are someone who wants to feel more empowered around your finances as a business owner, as a woman, and you want to get your assets together, this is a conversation you're not going to want to listen to just once. You're probably going to want to repeat it and take copious notes because there's so much value inside. KK, welcome to Powerhouse Women.
It's an honor to be here.
I'm so excited. Oh my goodness. We've gotten to drop in just a few times. We met just this last year at Create and Cultivate, which was a phenomenal event. And you got to come to Powerhouse Women. You came and spoke for our Expanders Retreat. Every single time I get to sit down and talk to you, I learn something new. And I also feel, because you are so wise, and we're going to talk today about getting our assets together, ladies. You don't make me feel dumb for not having my assets together. Fantastic. Or not knowing the things that we're going to talk about today. And I think that's actually a really beautiful thing to point out, that there's a generosity in the way that you share your wisdom that doesn't come from being on a pedestal and anything other than you've experienced a level of financial freedom that you deeply want others to be able to experience, especially women. Where did that come from?
I feel very seen by that. Thank you. I wish I could tell you that there was like a perfect lineage to how I got here. Growing up the way that I did, we immigrated here at a very young age. This is a very glamorous story. My dad threatened to kill my mom, and so she packed us up in the middle of the night, and we left this tiny island in the Caribbean called Trinidad, and we landed in Florida. And I really just remembered seeing my mom's darkest moments, but also having a front row seat to her glow up. And so for me, money had a place in that story, but I think the underrepresented part of that story was also skill and self-improvement. And so as I leaned into that, I realized that money with the natural skill set comes really easily, but I want to empower people to go much further than that. And when I say get your assets together, it's about so much more than just wealth. And it's because I'm living my own best practices and I'm living it in such a quiet way. I want to be loud in the areas that matter. And the only way I can do that, at least as best I've seen, is to embody it very fully, very authentically, and honestly, very boldly, so I can make the claim, walk the walk, and encourage you to do the same.
You're so right, actually. I'm going to double down now on my acknowledgement of you, because I think this is expansive for me as a woman. You are loud and proud, meaning you're willing to use your voice and share what you've been able to achieve financially. Where there could be, I've experienced, because of my own upbringing, shame around letting people see the big wins, because that can oftentimes come with triggering very strong feelings in others. And yet the way you live out your wealth, which is authentic to you, not saying this is the one right way to live it out, is, and you shared this even in your the podcast form you filled out, is just you are a minimalist in many ways. So I didn't plan to necessarily go here, but I'm realizing how impactful this is for me, because that is part of what has inspired me, impacted me about getting to know you. Is it's that dichotomy between you are bold and unapologetic about what you've been able to do, and you want to pass that on to others. And you also own it from a place that is authentically your representation of being a wealthy woman. Looks like minimalism. It doesn't look like the external thing that maybe we could judge.
Say that.
And also it's like, is that actually wrong if that's someone's authentic way to live out their wealth, is to have more material things? Who's to say that that's wrong?
Absolutely not. Not if it's authentic. I think what I often find is money is a magnifier of who we really want to be. And so when we chase material things, if that is our end goal, it becomes very empty. It doesn't mean it's not part of the story.
Yeah.
But it does mean that it's not the only story. And yet when I think about legacy building, now that's deep. And actually, I'm going to use a word, freedom. And the freedom that I feel today is so different than when I started out. I had an early start to my career. And I think what I can tell you I did wrong in the first half of my career, which was pure hustle culture, was really rooted not from a place of wanting to be seen as successful. It was from, I would say, leveraging my natural skill sets and having a heart for efficiency and for, it's called lean Kaizen. It's this Japanese philosophy about being 1% better and incrementally better. That's just so deeply inside of me. However, in the work that I've done with the people I've known, the one thing that keeps people from that level of success is usually the growth at all costs, hustle culture mindset. And so I kept seeing this discontinuity between the personal and the professional. Mm-hmm. And so as I leaned into my own success, I realized, well, two things. One, not being honest about how I got here keeps a lot of people trapped in this view of what could be and what is without actually knowing the tactics to get there. And most of the time, I would say the greatest freedom, the greatest flex that I feel like I could share authentically was actually different than just the things I wear or the house I own. It is the ability to do anything I want and choose very little of it. That is the mic drop moment for me.
Damn. Like that actually just needs a moment of silence. The ability to choose whatever I want. And what was the second part you said?
And just not if I don't want to.
And not actually be overcome by the pursuit of wealth or almost like the responsibility of it. When it isn't, and what I'm hearing that between the lines is that it's your identity isn't rooted in it.
That's right.
Therefore, it has freedom to stay, or it has freedom to go, or it has freedom to move.
Yeah, it's fluid. I call it scalable freedom. I think we have this very one-track minded way of thinking about growth, especially as business owners, right? So there's the growth at all costs model, which is just more is better. And actually what I find, especially with my background, my background is behavioral science. Mm-hmm. I always say
one of my favorite things about you.
Odd, right?
We could just nerd out.
My powers for good now, but the knowledge of the brain, why we do what we do and how we make those changes is actually a little bit different when you apply it the way I have, both in my career and my personal life. So when you think about what makes us stronger, it's actually not just one path. It's usually this idea of optionality. If you talk to most people who are on that grind, they actually want the option or the opportunity to do multiple things at different stages of their life, different opportunities that may pop up in their personal lives. And they often feel trapped by that one-track view. So essentially what I believe is that there are really multiple ways to get where you want to go. That scalable freedom means you have optionality every step of the way. And I think that's what's not being told. That's the story behind the story, which is that there can be a path where at first you start out and you just want to be extremely efficient, and I call it cash flow and grow. And you just enjoy all the money in the bank bothering you. And that can be a goal. It's my favorite goal. I'm still there.
Bothering you.
Just annoying you. And the tax man comes and there's a whole thing. But then there's this other version that really is, right now they're pit as dichotomy, right? It's one or the other. And so that other side of it is that you have this big exit and this acquisition and this, big, hairy, audacious financial goal. But there's multiple gradients in between each of those two things. And I think that is the path to success. It's slower. It's more thoughtful and intentional. You have to be extremely rigorously proactive. But I think that's the thing that most people are missing about success.
Okay, so to put this into context, you consult with huge and small companies. You have acquired companies. You have been in the trenches. You are an operator. You've seen so many different viewpoints of business. So in this conversation about freedom, what would you say is the number one thing blocking business owners from experiencing true freedom in their businesses?
Well, they treat their business like a job and not an asset. So I think when I first started thinking about doing a growth operating system, really it came from this idea that it's not a quick hit. I can't just dance about it on TikTok. It's a very definitive path to success, but it's depth, not breadth. And so I would say the hardest thing to share is that they don't have their assets together. So all of their goals come from chasing their own tail about the thing that they didn't do upfront. I would say living as minimally as possible, or said a different way, having enough set aside for a rainy day and for options to grow is really that first step. So, on traditional wealth management, they may say to have a certain number of days on hand with regards to cash. Or on the personal development side, we may say having a certain number of a freedom number or how much money you have in the bank for emergencies. Do you know what's really hard about that is the number should be much bigger than what's kind of aligned with the assets under management philosophies of most financial institutions. They want you to be trapped in this debt spiral, leverage and doing more. The truth of the matter is, if you have enough put aside, hear me out here, 12 to 36 months of emergencies and expenses, you don't just have security, which is extremely important to most of us. You have the ability to grow, to fund your own growth. I love growth by acquisition. I'm a business girly and I love being able to grow that way. But you have now cash in the bank or opportunities on the table that would never have been available to you had you not had that level of rigorous discipline and fiscal responsibility.
And you're right, because the 12 to 36 months is quite a bit more than the 3 to 6 or 6 to 12. And I'll even put myself in that category because I know myself to be able to generate money if I needed it. It feels irresponsible to keep, let's say, like that much cash in a high yield savings account or where it could be making me money elsewhere.
That's right.
So there's so many different ways that we hear this same advice packaged. And it can be really confusing to know what the right path for your specific business model is.
Yeah, I love that we're having this conversation as if we're just girlfriends pulling out our bank account. So let's have that conversation. I think there's something to be really thought of with regards to essentially how you run your entire life. I love the portfolio approach, right? I think of it as whether it's your business or your personal life, really rigorously thinking about it as a high performing asset. And so no good asset manager would tell you to put all of your eggs in one basket. So I'm actually not saying to put all of it in cash. I'm saying there's, for me, 15 to 20 different income sources that I still currently have. And so there are different ebbs and flows to those income sources. If a product business is having a high, sometimes the service business is having a low, right? If my assets under management, like my stocks and bonds, are having a record year, sometimes that means my precious metals, my different things that I do that are much more alternative, like buying in businesses or investing in bigger businesses, they may have those decoupling effects. And that actually gives you that same level of stability and the ability to have the optionality that we're thinking about. So I always think that 12 to 60 or 12 to 36 months, it's not just sitting in the bank,
not
bothering
all liquid,
you. All liquid.
Bothering
Yeah, getting that 0.5%, from your bank.
So
it's
brutal.
It's strategically asset aligned, which means it's in different places doing different things, kind of ebbing and flowing along with your choices in life and with the market.
And I'm glad that I asked or just was reflecting on that because I heard it the other way when you first said it. I think because most of the financial blanketed advice is you do X, you put this much amount in. I mean, even just the thought of putting it in a high yield account, people aren't necessarily distinguishing between that it's sitting in accounts that aren't actually making any money.
Yeah.
We're getting our assets together, ladies.
And that could look many different ways. I like thinking about what's the easiest way to start out? And it's actually, I always say acquiring businesses was not like an act of gusto. It was just basic financial sense. I kept getting the money back every month. So once you make that big outlay, you actually start getting a return quite quickly versus going out the risk curve. Most people don't ask me about the other things that I do with my money. I'm a general partner in a private equity fund. I'm a venture capitalist on the limited partner side. And so I do a lot of different things for those 15 to 20 different income sources. And so part of that is knowing almost a phased approach. There was a time where there was so much money in liquid that I started just putting bigger bets in different places. One of the great problems to have when you buy cash flowing businesses is there's always cash left over. There's always this, what do they call it now? Printing money. I just think of it as where can I have the greatest impact, both personally and professionally. And so there is an approach to this that takes, I would say, I call it the discipline of asset management and the operational efficiency of this lean Six Sigma approach that I've actually done in my career. And then there's the optionality. And then there's the willingness to say, well, what feels heart-led versus what does everybody else tell me to do?
Yeah. And I want to circle back to something that you were really passionate about in a moment, which is entrepreneurship through acquisition. But I feel like I would be doing a disservice to the listeners who are at the earlier stages of getting their assets together if I didn't ask this question. As much as you're willing to share about your personal journey of building to where you've built now. So maybe share, even for expansion purposes, your net worth, what you've kind of given us a picture. It's in all these different income sources. But then if you were to break it down to like, what were those first few steps as you started to build this? Because it can feel sometimes hearing from a person who's so much further down, or it appears that they're so much further along the journey, that it's hard to then close the gap of like, what would I do today? So expand us. What does your financial net worth picture look like now? And then where did you start?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. I think it really gives a deeper picture to what most people think, which is the highlights reel. And then I'm starting out from the very beginning. So I would say, depending on how you look at it, I have between a $30 and $40 million net worth. It's an insane thing to think about because when you ask me how I made the money to get here, it's going to sound incredibly unsexy and boring. I worked for it. I started early in my career. I grew my skill sets. And so, 24 years ago in this month, I become this person that I look back and realized that behavioral science was going to be kind of the linchpin in all of this, right? Business strategy and behavioral science means I could really make big opportunities happen, both for myself and for businesses that I work with. And so I leveraged my skill sets way before I had lots of money in the bank. Now, being rigorously fiscally conservative means I started earning very early on. So stocks and bonds was probably the first way that I got there. I had a company match. I work for a very large company called Lilly now. I wish I hadn't sold their stock because they're now like the leader in the GLP-1s, and I sold their stock a little bit ago. So I'm like, well, there's that. You don't always get it right. But with stocks and bonds, it gives you that really easy, highly liquid way to start, dollar cost averaging, which basically means putting money in the market slowly so that there are highs and lows to the market as well. I'm sure we're all feeling that right now if we're in there. And so it gives you a chance to start investing. And, they'll have an adage that I really believe in, which is, the best day to start investing was yesterday. But the next best day is right now. And so I just happened to start 24 years ago when I was just making a few $1,000s a month, a couple $1,000s a year in the stock market. So that was the first step, was really just putting aside as much as I could and then putting that into something that grows. Compounding interest is kind of the greatest thing that ever happened to me. So I hit $1 million doing that, before 25, which was really crazy to think about. At that same time, I started doing liquid and illiquid. So that's when I started investing in real estate. I knew I needed a place to live. This is the early 2000s, which was interesting because they always said, great place to put your money was a home. I think probably the greatest thing about that was that I was living underneath my means so drastically that when the 2008 crisis happened, I was already cash flowing the business and cash flowing my home that I owned and had a best friend who became best friend for life that was a roommate. And so I was able to sell that asset 13 years later at a high. So I kind of rode out the market. But I would say for most people starting out, putting aside, even if it's, there's $10 a day can turn into $1 million over a couple of decades.
Mm-hmm.
So putting aside money every single month, as much as you can, putting it into the market so it can do its work, and being, and I hate to say aggressive at this younger age or at the starting out phase, but you'll need that in order to get the compounding interest kicked out. Then investing in things that really feel aligned to your lifestyle. So for me, living in a home that had an extra room, having extra space was really important to me. And I think a lot of people, this sounds contrarian for the things that I do, could stop right there. They could live a decent life.
Yes. Yes. I'm so grateful to be having this conversation. And I just want to be also really transparent with people, because I think sometimes as like the person sitting and hosting this interview and people see the events that I host, I know I make up what someone's like bank account and financial life looks like just based on what I see from the outside. And I think a really important part of my own journey right now is the fact that at 42, after going through my divorce, I'm at a complete financial reset, down to zero. And part of that is because I was not actually set up properly. And the gift in it is that I think I've shared before on previous episodes, there was an element to my divorce where there was a very large chunk of money through the sale of real estate that ended up having to be paid out for something that felt really unfair. So I could have like struggled with just being in the victim story of that. But I sat there and I realized that was the greatest gift I've been given, because I wouldn't have changed my habits.
That's right.
If I were sitting on this certain amount of money that I perceived as safe. So I'm sitting here with you as a 42-year-old woman, realizing that I didn't start at that younger age. And for anyone listening who's feeling that or hears a story like that and either tunes out because they think it's too late or feels shame, because there's a different version of me that actually would feel I wouldn't want to admit that to you. Number one, because I really respect you. Number two, because gosh, what if people listening are like, well, I thought Lindsay was more successful, and the business does well, but the conversation you got to hear the tail end of that I was having with my girlfriend Aisha right when you arrived, we're both in this journey of realizing I have to actually create the life and the structure. The life meaning, am I living below my means?
That's right.
Am I creating an actual structure for me to be able to dedicate money toward investing in all the ways that you're saying?
Yeah.
And I just really want anyone who's you could be older than me, you could be younger than me, and realizing like, shit, I didn't know any of this. Like no one taught me this in school and I didn't know it. I'm starting today. I opened my first brokerage account this week.
Yes.
So is it ever too late?
No. Never. And I can tell you, so there's parts of my story that look really glamorous. Let's talk about the worst part of my story, which is I almost lost it all. I got married and divorced very young. And at that time, I had already hit work optionality. This is one of the perks of living as far underneath your means as you're willing to go. But I had a prenup that I never thought I would need to enforce. And I can tell you in those darkest moments, you realize that money is not the thing that's going to solve your problems. And so it is never too late to start over. What you're hearing from me is someone who just had to start over relationally and in my personal life, because the way my brain works, there are other benefits to it that helped me professionally. But I can truly tell you when bank account is lower than your spirits, I think that sometimes is a better place to be, because you can always get to that next step. But when your spirits are lower than your bank account, especially the difficulty after a divorce is really starting all over again and changing the way you view yourself. And I would have never gotten here so self-sufficient to be able to share and to hold space to help others to get their assets together if I hadn't gone through a really horrific, abusive relationship. So thank you for sharing that with me. I take it so personally, because I know there are parts of our story that always keep us dark and keep us, to ourselves. And yet I think the greatest thing I would want to share is actually you can be anyone from anywhere, starting from any positioning and get where you want to go. It takes some strategy. It takes some intention. It takes proactivity. It takes honesty, but that willingness to lean in. And I know you're a personal development girly like me. So like the willingness to really face yourself is actually the greatest asset there is.
Yes. And thank you for so generously sharing that view into the part of your story that most people didn't see if they're meeting you today.
Yeah.
And this is actually helping me connect the dots. Part of why I wasn't set up for the way I want to feel financially, actually had nothing to do with lack of connections or resources to that. It was the shame stopping me from asking people who would have been so willing to help me. Because I, even 10 years ago, felt like, gosh, I should know this. Or I guess I'm invested with a financial planner. So like, is that good enough? But I realized how much I was outsourcing my own power, hoping someone else would have the answers or take control of it for me. And I was being so passive in it. That was really the wake-up call. It wasn't even that I was outsourcing that to my previous partner. I was the one who was more controlling over our resources, almost from like a need to feel safe kind of standpoint. So controlled the budget, controlled all this, but I wasn't educating myself because I didn't have the humility to sit with someone like you and say, this is embarrassing at 42 to admit I have no idea how all of this works. And I just finally hit that point at the beginning of this year to say, no, I don't want to feel this way about money, about my assets anymore. So what is it that I need to set to the side? And it's the pride, it's the ego, it's realizing there's an abundance of resources and people like you, kind-hearted people, brilliant women who are willing to share, okay, here's exactly what I did. And it's not silly to have to ask this. No, we all had to ask this at one point.
I still Google stuff. Let's be clear. I do a lot of things, right? Like I trade options. Like I'm always learning. This brain never turns off with regards to learning. And so there are still times I'm having a full conversation and I'm like, please hold. And I'm looking it up to make sure that I know, or that if I really don't know, I ask. And I think it takes the bravest to be able to say, I don't know, so we can get where we want to go. It's important. It's an important part for women. I guess that's why I came out of stealth. You know, I was living this chill vibes life, you know, what do they call it? The slow life. And I was really enjoying that. But every time I showed up and kind of showed up very fully, the questions I were asked was not tactical. It wasn't like Vanguard or Fidelity, you know, real estate or I Googled crypto. That this week. See what I mean? And I still don't know the answer to that one. Both, hopefully.
I was like, it was all
matter.
The same.
But the questions were really around, well, how do I take ownership over something that I'm petrified of? Or how do I lean into a skill set that I don't know I naturally have? And so those are the questions that I think are really important that we ask ourselves. Women are in the middle of this unprecedented economic moment, but we will only get it if we get our assets together. It is important to show up and say, no, girl, bank account out. Let's see, like what's going on? What do you need? What are you thinking about? What are your goals? I think most goals are considered like really big and exciting, but actually it's those smaller, quieter goals that I think are the most important.
And all of my goals, if you look at traditionally at the beginning of the year, the things that I say I want to achieve typically were more of the, breakthrough type of goals. And this year I just knew that I'm being asked to start back at square one and create actual structure and safety in the very mundane, very boring. So it's it's a monthly goal based on savings and making sure my budget is in line with being able to dedicate that amount into this new brokerage account. And it's like we know I know this intellectually, but just like I was talking about with Aisha, I was not living it because I had so much cash bothering me at the point. It didn't require me to get really serious and get my assets together.
There's something really beautiful about putting your knowledge into practice and the rigor and the discipline that's needed. I think sometimes that's the hardest part, is like setting it and forgetting it. Those are those unsexy, like I'm not going viral for talking about this kind of stuff, right? But the fundamentals are really still the fundamentals. And I'm someone who achieved a level of wealth off of fundamentals. So I want to be really clear about that. Like setting a percent of whatever's coming in and saying that just goes before I can touch it. That is how I got here. I did not have some sort of like magic wand or crystal ball. It was truly about what is the thing that I'm going to want in 5 years or 10 years? And how do I work backwards to get there? So I think you're actually exactly where you want to be. And I don't want to trivialize it, but I think it may be easier than we're giving it credit to when we just start where we are. Again, it's that Japanese Kaizen principle, right? Just incrementally better every day, one small change every month or every year. It compounds just like our assets.
And I'm at the stage in my life and in my business where I do understand, number one, how to generate wealth through my business. So I understand how to use the vehicle that I have. I'm getting some other things in place to get more, recurring revenue where it's not as launch dependent, because that's something I realized also wasn't feeling good. It was very there was a lot of just a lot of, it didn't occur as pressure, but it could occur as pressure to the business.
Sure.
To say, well, there's one launch that happens at this time of year and one launch that happens at this time of year. And that's the budget for the year. Because then I go through what I went through in 2024 and I couldn't show up in the business in the same way that I normally would be going into a launch. So the launches were impacted.
Yeah.
So it just showed me, again, I wasn't set up for the actual freedom I wanted to experience.
That's right.
And I'm building it now. So thank you for just also the reminder, because what's beautiful is now I have the ability to generate the cash flow where I can invest a lot more than 20-year-old Lindsay, who is,
that's right,
or 25-year-old coming into the workforce, making $40,000 a year, right, with my first salary. So I want to now compound this, because what happens is everything you're laying out, as we start to put these fundamentals in place, it starts to create options.
Mm-hmm.
One of those options being entrepreneurship, not through the hustle, grind, startup, but through acquisition, acquiring a business that is already cash flowing. So I would like you to talk about this, because it's number one, a strategy that you have employed. You have an amazing company. This is somewhat how we connected, called Ghost Democracy.
Yeah.
If you were at the 2025 Powerhouse Women event, you were so generous to gift product to all the attendees, the VIP attendees. And I want you to talk about what that means. Like, if you're explaining it to a fifth grader, entrepreneurship through acquisition, what that actually means for someone who's like, I've always wanted to own a business. I have a lot of maybe assets from this corporate role, but the thought of starting over and going to zero as a business owner, no, thank you.
Yeah, I'm a big no on the 90% failure rate of startups. And listen, there are great options and times to start up and try. But I think for me, a lot of this is going to go back to this rigorous asset management like philosophy and, operational efficiency. And honestly, as a minimalist, the way I viewed this was, one, I was freshly divorced. Two, I had just pretty much protected my prenup and felt free financially, but trapped emotionally. And so the unhealthy KK thought I would buy myself a new opportunity, new friends, new people to work with. And so that's actually, it was rooted in a very unhealthy thought process at that time. Recovering codependent, which means I just needed people to need me. And because I didn't have like work to rely on anymore, a family life, I really thought I'll just buy my way into an opportunity that would feel right and do the thing that I feel most aligned in my life with, which is my personal or my professional life. So that's where it started. What I will tell you is one of the biggest and most important unlocks for me on my strategy team is a CPA, a tax strategist that helps you to kind of figure out, how do you leverage the tax code in a way where I'm not going to pretend that you're, operating like the 1%, but you are thinking more strategically about most of us, our biggest business partner, which is Uncle Sam. And so as I started coming to that thought process after year one of the divorce, I realized that there's, once again, money in the bank bothering me, liquid and illiquid, but then also an opportunity to do something that had much greater impact. So I acquired two businesses that I was already a client of. And so the first thought I would want someone to have about growth or entrepreneurship through acquisition is that you're basically taking some of the pitfalls of business and some of the things that you may not fully understand, and you're bringing that to light post the business's life. So it could be 1 year in, it could be 10 years in. And what you're essentially doing is you're getting a piece of the cash flow that it's already generating, or you may get all of it if you buy out the business like I do. But ultimately, you're getting an opportunity to level up your skills as well as your finances. And for me, that was the exciting unlock. So with acquisition, I would say thinking about it as part of your asset stack, right? Just like we have, different things that we like, we can have different things that we invest in. And so sometimes real estate is illiquid for the stage of life that you may be in, right? Sometimes stocks and bonds are just not enough. Most wealth is made in the private markets, not in the public markets. By the time a business gets to an IPO or the stock exchange, they've already basically drained all the real wealth opportunity out of it. So this alternative investments is what they're now calling it, is a chance for you to have a seat at the ownership table, which ultimately, of the 300 million in exits that I've advised on or been a part of, it's the ownership that gets you there. It's not just the systems. It's not just the brand. It's having something that you can really call your own.
Yeah, gosh. It really is bringing such a high level conversation that I hope for those of you listening is just getting wheels turning.
That's right.
That haven't turned before. You're unlocking a part of your brain that may be speaking to, and I'll be so curious to hear the ripple effect of this conversation. If it really inspired someone to be like, gosh, I've always known I was meant to be an entrepreneur. I hadn't ever considered that. Because I think we're at this interesting time in history as well, where just as business owners, it's like what used to work isn't working.
That's right.
And I think there's such opportunity in that. I think a lot of, maybe it's also being in what people would consider midlife. I think as you get into 40s, for me, I know that I am on an aligned path, but I watch a lot of people in this stage kind of be like, why am I doing what I'm doing? And it's the time that you want to make major pivots. So you're just bringing so much. It's not even inspiration, it's just optionality. I'm going to steal your word. Truly. Because there's so many different pathways to get to the same objective, whether that objective be business ownership or wealth creation and freedom.
Yeah.
You are invested in so many different businesses. You are personally involved in businesses across the spectrum of industry. And you were nodding as I said, business is changing. What once worked isn't working anymore. We're already feeling that. What are you seeing? What are some of the trends? What should we know? And I actually want to hear it through your neuroscience perspective as well, because I don't think it's just the strategy trends. I actually think we're being asked to evolve as the owners, the founders, the conscious beings who are running these businesses just as much.
For sure. There's a phrase I stumbled across right before the global pandemic, which was the human energy crisis. And I tell you, that keeps me up at night still.
What does that mean?
It's this a concept and idea that our nervous systems are just constantly depleted.
Yes.
So whether it's dopamine driven social media, whether it's always chasing the next, milestone. And then there's this really unique thing that happens is as we start having access to more and achieving more, sometimes we realize we're not on the path we actually want to be on. There's the golden handcuffs, as people call it. So I will say that was kind of that first mindset shift for me. The first half of my career, I saw nothing but abundance. But the second half of my career, I saw a very distinctive shift, the K-shaped economy. Those who had more and got more faster, and those who didn't declined faster. And that's persisted. And that bothers me more than anything. As someone who came from nothing, I have such a heart for people being able to get to their next step. And, I would say that there's something about the world we're navigating today where our nervous system dysfunction is not being given its proper cadence to how it's affecting us. And so I kept seeing clients that had, the money in the bank and the external validation and opportunities, but their personal lives were a hot mess. And that, as you so delicately shared, can tank even the greatest of life and business. So I would say that's something that I think we can do something about, even though it doesn't sound like business. I believe that personal and professional are desperately intertwined. And so oftentimes if we're not getting our assets together or working on our personal development, our professional lives wane, but also vice versa.
Yep.
And it's easy to focus on one versus the other depending on your skill sets, right? So I would say balance is the thing that I wish more of that we don't see.
Yeah.
The other thing I see really clearly is that most of the things that we think of as success are really vanity metrics.
Yes.
I mean, top line revenue is my favorite thing to hate on because it means nothing at the end of the day. Do you know? Like,
it's so true.
We give the big number and we smile and we look expectantly for people to be impressed. And actually, when I think about my net worth, I actually would give you a liquid number much faster than a net worth number, because for me, it's like, what is the valuation? Like times 2, do the calculus in my head, like where does that really go and what does it really mean?
Yes.
And I think balance is the thing that we often overlook. That is the goal that we all have. It's not just one way of success. It's not just one version of wealth. It's a little bit of everything. And so I think we've really messed that up, to be honest. The way we run our businesses, the way we think about the vanity metrics of likes and hype and highlights reel is just so different from who we really want to be. And I think it was never more clear to me that when I got completely off social and completely off being visible, that I realized that 1, I made more money. 2, my clients and all my investments made more money. And 3, I realized I really liked myself enough to not seek the vanity metrics of life. But most business owners are still in that hamster wheel of, creating a business and a life that's more of a job than it is an asset.
Yeah. And you're you're making me think back to what you were just sharing about being so transparent, that part of the motivation behind the first 2 acquisitions was, now you can see it as codependent patterns, as, things that as we're doing them, we don't realize.
That's right.
We're still playing out childhood patterns and safety and survival strategies that just don't actually fit the life we're trying to build. And it took this complete life dismantling for me to turn to the healing work that has taught me everything about the way that I was coping before without realizing it. And so what's the connection for you? How did you actually start to heal yourself? Because the woman sitting here today is very different than the woman who acquired those first 2 businesses post-divorce. What did that healing trajectory look like for you?
Boy, how much time do we have?
I know. I'm like, should we do a 3-part series? Yeah, whatever you feel like really intuitively led to share about it. Because of course, you're right. Trying to describe it in a few sentences is impossible.
No, there's so much to it. I'll tell you that the deep work, the ugly work came from not just counseling, but support groups for women with codependency. It turns out many of us end up having addicted spouses. So that's how you get there. And so practicing vulnerability, I could never sit here and talk to you as deeply as I, am now 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. And it's because I didn't have any practice in the art form of good communication, depth communication. So I had to learn those skills all over again, as if I was a baby with new neurons. And so sharing with people who had similar struggles and similar life paths really helped me. Support groups are probably my favorite hack that most people don't talk about, because it really kind of gives you a lens into who you can be, but also people to help you be accountable on the way up. And when you slip, they're there and kind of knocking on your door or putting phone calls out there. So I would say that's one that you probably wouldn't see by looking at me. The other, there's something to be said for really being able to reinvent yourself. I think the things that looked like confidence on the outside was actually just a scared little girl trying to make sure she kept all the balls alive and all the, juggling at all times. And so really building my confidence came from a number of things, including investing in myself, my body, what I eat. And to this day, that's where I spend the money. Yeah. So most people think it's in, the things or the clothing or the house. It's not. It's actually in the olive oil that I eat and regenerative foods and the things that most people would think of as not as exciting because it's not the thing you want to share. So I really started going deep on, what do I do somatically for my body, movement, and kind of doubling down on that as, a core basic need of mine.
It is.
That's how I got here. Coincidentally, it's also what gave me the skills, the additional layer of skills beyond the MBA, beyond the business background, which I always had transparently.
Yeah.
Was this idea and this hope for blending the personal and professional. And so those first 2 businesses I bought, they were dance studios that I was a part of, trying to rebuild my personality and figure out who I was again.
Yes. You so brilliantly tied that together. And I think we're starting to come to an awareness that we cannot separate, especially as women.
That's
and
right.
So many of the conversations I've been having this week as I'm recording come back to our power as women being in our body. That's where our intuition lives.
Right.
It's where our creativity lives. There's so many different places we could go with this. It's like the connection between our sexual energy and our creativity. And I'm even noticing how sensitive I am if I have 1 serving of caffeine during a day versus 2.
Interesting.
It puts me into a different state. I didn't realize how disconnected I was from my body pre-divorce.
Yeah.
Then realized I was so disconnected from my physical body and operating in a way I'm just not designed to operate.
That's right.
I would hold my pee. Like I would not go to the bathroom.
Yes.
I would skip meals. I was trying to override and then wondering why I would kind of crash and burn out. And not to the extent that I was fully burnt out. I never felt that I was that extreme with it. But coming back to myself through the healing journey and realizing everything I eat shows up in my business.
Yeah.
Indirectly.
Yeah.
It's not like it's like the book. I love the book, The One Thing, where he talks about it. The things that make the difference are easy to do, but they're easy not to do.
That's right.
So you don't like drop dead if you have the one cheeseburger. And I love a cheeseburger. Don't get me wrong. But it's like, am I living my day-to-day life in the thoughts that I think,
That's
the
right.
foods that I eat, the way that I speak to myself? is that creating the business that I want?
Yeah.
And I think we can start to feel the congruency between that, between when we're it's just like something is off because there's not congruency, mind, body, and soul.
That's right.
And so I'm like obsessed. Clearly, I'm geeking out that you're talking about this because it's that. It's that.
Yeah.
I work more on that, and my mindset and all of it is 90%. I work on the business 10%. Because when I focus on the others, I get the best ideas. I'm the most creative. The things that actually make Powerhouse Women what it is and so special, the unique things that no one can quite put their finger on, it's not things that I was taught strategy-wise. Right. It was things that I connected to, and I'm like, ooh, I just know because I'm connected to my body now.
That's right. It's funny because there used to be no phrase for this, and now the concept around it is being multi-hyphenate. Yeah. And I think for a lot of women listening to this, they may be stuck in a box in corporate or in a beginning of something that they've created. And this idea of being multi-hyphenate means not listening to one or the other, right? Yeah. Finding peace to hold to truth is really the way this starts. And I think for many of us, what came to me as being a business expert from the beginning of my career to being someone who loved the industries that I was, consulting in, buying into, and investing into was this idea that why couldn't both be true? Why couldn't I be someone who is very good at the financial aspect, but also able to leverage my skills in a way where I brought all of that very fully to the table with every acquisition? So nobody ever asked this. There is a thesis to my investments, and it comes around and centers around one ideal client. So it's industry agnostic, although it's mostly fitness, beauty, health, wellness, future of work and money. But really what it shows up as is there's a woman, she's a woman, 30 plus, who really cares about what she does to her body, what she does to her mind, how she treats every aspect of her life. And so what I've done is basically take that skill and that capital and double down on that woman, whether it's an investment, an acquisition, or advising and mentoring. That is my North Star. So that's how it all comes together. It's like that multi-intuitiveness, that multi-hyphenate, really understanding how the somatic awareness of my body changed my whole business and trajectory. Yeah. I was able to help other women shine a light on that as well.
And you know that woman because you are that woman.
100%.
Damn, this is so good.
That's my unfair advantage, right? Like you can't tell me what she wants. She is me. Yes. And that allows me to also go deeper on my own self-love, right? Because I can never go asleep at the wheel. If I'm the ideal client, I need to continue to do that inner work so that I'm my best when I show up for the businesses. So it's really a great revolving door. Keeps me accountable.
Yes. Okay. So if a business owner listening to this is starting to reflect on their own business and personal habits, seeing it all as one, what would you advise them to look at within their day-to-day life for the connection to how their business is operating?
I'm going to use a phrase I think has become very popular, the messy middle.
Yeah.
You ever met a lawyer who loves to teach yoga? They're certainly not doing it for the money. It's this middle of how we spend our day, our minutia. What are you doing at noon? What are you doing at 3:00? What gets you lit up despite and in spite of all the things that you have going on in your life? Yeah. And so one of the things I've seen as a throughput with many of the women I've worked with at all capacities is that they can hold multiple truths. It makes them more successful and it allows them to leverage multiple strengths, which is, as women and as business owners, a true unfair advantage. It allows you to go further, faster. Notice I'm already like lit up as I'm talking about it because I can see the outcomes both, technically I love quantitative analysis, data analysis is part of my skill sets, but I also see it qualitatively, which is that you wake up every day excited about what you're doing. You're no longer dreading the golden handcuffs. You no longer live a life that isn't yours because it's not really the one you want. So regardless of money, I call it generational growth. This is the thing I think most people desire and never get to because they're not willing to sit with that and think through, what are my natural skill sets and what are the things I need to learn and lean into and hold truth for both.
That's so beautiful because I'm even reflecting on out of nowhere. This is like so random, but in this past year and a half, I'm like, I just need to make art. Now, I could argue that there's a very real creative outlet to the Powerhouse Women event. Yeah. Although a lot of the creative elements in terms of the physical construction of the stage, the photo ops, things like that, I'm collaborating with Matiana of Dang Fine Rentals, who we love, and she is brilliant at what she does. But it's been this slow return to actually what a creative being I am, which directly opposes, again, if we go back to like the survival strategy, what I thought my value came from was the work and the performance and the grades. It is having such a dramatic ripple effect on my energy, on the way I'm showing up in the business, it's like when I will be, I bought myself last year this paint by numbers, like adult paint by numbers. It's this beautiful portrait that you would find, you'd like buy it at Home Goods, but I'm painting it myself. And it gives you all the little, because I am creative and I couldn't replicate that painting by myself. That's not my form of creativity, but I will be sitting and painting and I'm getting ideas, I'm getting answers. Yep. And and I will be sitting there and realizing 2 years ago, if that Lindsay saw me now, she would feel like, well, that's so unproductive, or it's, doesn't feel directly connected to, let's just say, an income producing activity.
Sure.
Gasp if I'm doing it at noon on a work day as I'm like my own boss, but like thinking someone's going to show up at my door and knock and be like, what are you doing? Why are you not working? What are we getting wrong about this multi-hyphenate reality, especially as women, and who we are actually meant to be / I think where our true power really lies? What are we misunderstanding about that connection?
I think while usually we're very good at being intuitive, we almost over-explain who we need to be. We have to put ourselves in the very boxes we say we don't want people to put us in, right?
We just build those little walls.
That's right. And there's simplicity in that and there's safety in that.
Yeah.
But actually when I hear what you're getting excited about, I see that as multiple ways to feel success. And sometimes it doesn't cross over. Sometimes it doesn't, blend with business. Yeah. It may just be the thing that lights you up throughout the day-to-day so that you can get back to doing the other things that you do. Yes. It's not always a monetizable opportunity.
Exactly.
And there are many things I do that aren't monetized, right? Yeah. But I think there's something so intuitive about how our body is connected to our mind. And, as a behavioral scientist, much of what I've studied is how that gut-brain axis really works. And the easiest way I can explain it is if something's not right here, something's not right here. But if something's not right here, something's not right here. Yeah. But what if something's right here? Then everything works within that. And if something's right here, this is our body, everything throughout our system. Yes. It starts firing here. It's not uncommon to hear that, in the middle of an art session, you get great ideas. Yes. I get my best ideas exercising. I wrote the entire growth operating manual through exercise.
Yes. And literally. That is another big outlet for me. So if someone's listening to just the audio and wasn't seeing, you're pointing like to your physical body. That's if something's not right here, like imagine pointing to your gut. Yep. It's not right here, meaning in the head, in the mind. Yeah. So what are the words you would put to those two different places that you're pointing to as you're referencing them? Yeah. So our vagus nerve, which is the biggest and longest nerve in our body, is a bidirectional pathway. Bidirectional means it flows up and flows back down through the same system. That means they are that interconnected. Think about a highway where there are 2 lanes and they're both going in opposite directions and can turn at any time and go in the same direction. Mm-hmm. So when I say that our body is connected to our mind, it truly is. And when our mind is connected to our body, we unlock even greater success. But I think we often think about things in just, one door, and then you must close that door to go to the other door. I believe most things in life are 2-way doors. You can go from one side to the other, cross over, and still find success. Yes, that's such a brilliant way to put it. And somehow in this conversation, again, we've touched on so many of the things that without you even knowing the conversations I've had leading up to you arriving today, we've been touching on the importance of the nervous system, the understanding of the wisdom that the body holds, and then to pair it with the knowledge that you have gained through your real lived experience when it comes to wealth, when it comes to business. You really are just such a gift because you are not only that brilliant, but you're so generously willing to share it. And I really have not met many women who are operating at the level of generosity and brilliance and bringing those two together. And it's just really such an honor to know you and to get to call you a friend. Well, knowing you, even this year, there's something about you that has lit up a lot in me. Like I looked up my human design after Powerhouse Woman. I need to make sure I was on it, honey. And so I am a manifestor integrator. Oh yeah, you're for sure a manifestor.
Yeah,
that tracks.
Into initiator, manifestor,
Okay, yeah,
initiator.
yes.
And so essentially, I actually shied away from that after I looked it up and did the quiz. I thought a manifestor, that seems like somebody who just, focuses on mindset, nothing else. Yeah. But actually, when I sat with it, that secondary piece, that initiator piece, I believe that that's my God-given right on this earth, is to help others, especially those I love, to initiate their very best, to meet their fullest potential.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm living that every day. I feel so lucky, but I also know that I don't always get an opportunity to share. And you just saw me so fully, so quickly. And I'm just so grateful that we have the friendship that we're building, because it gives me a chance to also go deeper with myself again and practice what I preach and not gatekeep and be clear and say, look, if you want to ask a question, I'll answer it as fully as I can.
Yeah.
I want to be the change I wish to see in the world. And that really starts with me, as cheesy as it may be.
I've never asked someone live. I've never done a live proposal on the podcast, so let's hope this doesn't backfire. But will you come and speak at the Powerhouse Women event this year?
Oh, I would love it.
I can't.
You gave me
like
chills.
I can't. We can't not have you there. This is just really like such an honor to get to share this space with you, and I'm grateful I'm at the part in my journey where I'm humble enough to say I really need help in this area too, because I want to lead with integrity in the impact that I want to make. And what I've been doing unknowingly is by keeping myself in survival, in a very shiny, still version of survival, I'm not making the full impact that I know I'm here to make.
Yeah.
And I've come to the point in the healing layer where I'm ready for action again. I'm not as deeply embedded in the survival of just really needed to make sure that I was taken care of and I had a safe home and all of those things. And I don't think there's any coincidence that we met and connected in the time that we did.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful. Where do we send people to connect with you? I don't want to flood your DMs or your inbox, so I'm going to let you decide what level of just access and contact feels good for you, because you have so many resources. So I'd love for you to talk about some of the projects that you're doing and the meaningful ways that people can connect with you.
Well, I love sharing. And so actually I am the person that responds to everything and really enjoys that still. It gets me really excited every day to know that I'm making impact. So you can find me anywhere at KK Hart or KK Hart Inc. on Instagram.
And it's Hart.
Yes, Hart,
we'll link
like
it all
Kevin, but
in
he's no family.
Maybe we'll find a secret relation,
yes.
And that could be another income stream.
We're both multi-passionate, so there's that, But I would say the thing I'm most excited about now is really sharing the growth operating system. It's called Cashflow 2.0. It talks about those 4 different paths to success. And it's actually, it's almost 400 pages and leverages the thing that you just said so eloquently, which is action and implementation over everything. And so much of that manual is just a kickstart to rolling up our sleeves and doing the work. And it's something I love to do alongside people. So I'm always open to that.
Okay. And we'll make sure everything is linked so people can easily find it. The final question is one that I love to ask in these interviews. And it's such a reminder for everyone listening as well to pause and acknowledge themselves. We just call it a powerhouse moment. It can be anything big or small. But when I ask, what's a recent powerhouse moment that you want to celebrate yourself for? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Oh, this is going to sound so morbid. It's losing a best friend and realizing that I still had so much joy, even despite the grief. I feel so grateful that, we live in a world where bad things are happening so much more. But when it hits really close to home, it sometimes causes us to question, who am I? What am I really doing? And the greatest feeling in the world was realizing that despite that loss, I'm living exactly the life I want to live every single day. And there's just a renewed passion and joy that I feel just getting up, putting my feet on the ground, petting Sir Caramel Frappuccino, the king.
The king. Mm-hmm. We bow to him.
Yes.
Wait, what breed is he?
He's a silky terrier.
Oh my gosh, I got the cutest photo.
Him in the sauna.
He was in his red light sauna.
Yes, he's also a self-care aficionado.
Obviously, as he should be.
As he should be. But truly, like those little moments and not taking advantage of them. It means getting on a plane and flying to Scottsdale the second Lindsay asks. It means going deeper in our friendship and being open. Yeah. And it means really inspiring more and more women to lean into the life they want, not be afraid of what it may be, and to get their assets together.
Yeah, it's true, right? Death or loss of any kind is such a powerful mirror for what really matters, because it reminds us that we are here for a finite amount of time.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. That was the most beautiful way we could cap off this equally beautiful and deep conversation. And I look forward to the next one.
Me too.